though I've never heard of them. They were treating him like an underground artist, not because
In a world where everyone tried to fit in, one kid from Ladera Heights refused to. They called him loud, offensive, unpredictable, a troublemaker with a warped sense of humor. But behind the chaos was a mind constantly creating, sketching album covers at 12, designing imaginary record labels, building worlds no one else could see. By the time the world finally paid attention, it wasn't because he followed the rules, it was because he burned them. From eating a cockroach in Yonkers to wearing pastel suits and winning a Grammy for Igor, Tyler, the creator became something no one expected, a rebel who found beauty in honesty. He turned pain into poetry, anger into art, and loneliness into sound. But how did a kid once banned from entire countries rise to become one of the most innovative voices in modern music? How did he transform from the face of controversy to the soundtrack of self-acceptance? This is the story of Tyler Gregory Okonma, the boy who built his own universe, one beat, one color, and one unapologetic truth at a time. Tyler Gregory Okonma was born on March 6, 1991, in Ladera Heights, California, a suburb known for its quiet streets and restless dreams. His father, a Nigerian man, left before Tyler was even born. The absence became his first teacher, shaping a voice that would later echo through every lyric he wrote. Raised by his devoted mother, Louisa Bentley, Tyler grew up in small apartments where laughter and struggle shared the same space. His mother worked multiple jobs to keep the lights on, while Tyler spent hours alone, dismantling toys, sketching covers for imaginary albums, and inventing names for record labels that didn't yet exist. He wasn't the loudest in class, but he was the most curious. He would study the credits on CD booklets, wondering what each name meant. At 7, he taught himself piano by ear. At 12, he was already designing fake track lists for albums that only existed in his head. School was never kind to him. He was the weird kid, the one who dressed differently, talked about cartoons, and skated when everyone else played sports. But that isolation became his superpower. Tyler once said, "Being alone taught me how to build my own world, because no one was inviting me into theirs." It was during these years that the seeds of Odd Future were planted. Not in fame or fortune, but in the desperate desire to belong somewhere. A kid without a father, with too many ideas and too few outlets, Tyler learned the one rule that would define his life. If the world won't give you a space, build your own. By his late teens, Tyler's imagination had outgrown his bedroom walls. He gathered a few like-minded misfits, kids who skated, rapped, drew, and dreamed louder than anyone around them. Together they formed a chaotic collective that would soon shake the music world. Odd Future Wolfgang Kill Them All, or simply Odd Future. They weren't polished. They weren't trained. They were raw energy, recording tracks in basements, printing t-shirts by hand, and uploading everything to the internet. Their music was abrasive, darkly funny, and painfully honest, the sound of a generation raised online and unafraid of controversy. Tyler stood at the center, directing videos, designing logos, producing beats, and leading the charge. In 2009, he released his first solo mixtape, Bastard, a furious, confessional record that felt like therapy through distortion. The world didn't quite know what to make of it. Critics were divided. Fans were obsessed. Tyler had created something that felt alive, a mix of rebellion, vulnerability, and chaos. Then came Yonkers, 2011, the song that would change everything. The video, black and white, unsettling, unforgettable, showed Tyler eating a cockroach, hanging himself, and rapping with the calm of someone who didn't care if you liked him or not. It was shocking, disturbing, and brilliant. Overnight, he went from internet cult figure to cultural lightning rod. Suddenly, Odd Future was everywhere, performing on late-night TV, launching a TV show, Loiter Squad, and redefining what DIY success could mean. Tyler had turned defiance into a brand, a creative movement fueled by fearless individuality. What began as a group of outsiders making noise in a garage had exploded into a revolution, And at its center was a young man who had finally found his voice, even if the world wasn't ready to hear it. The world had seen rappers before, but never anyone like Tyler, the creator. He wasn't chasing trends, he was creating them. His 2011 album Goblin stormed the charts, filled with dark humor, horrorcore beats, and raw confessionals that blurred the line between performance and diary. Tyler's energy was volatile, at once hilarious, disturbing, and deeply human. While critics debated his lyrics, Tyler was busy building an empire. He founded his own label, Odd Future Records, turned the group's skater punk attitude into a fashion statement, and inspired a wave of youth who didn't fit anywhere else. His fans, mostly outsiders, misfits, and dreamers, saw in him a reflection of their own rebellion. By the time Wolf, 2013, dropped, Tyler had matured, still chaotic but with glimpses of storytelling genius. He began directing his own music videos, blending surrealism with emotional honesty. Then came Cherry Bomb, 2015. Noisy, messy, unapologetic. Critics called it too much. But for Tyler, that was the point. He wasn't here to be perfect. He was here to evolve. Beyond music, he was crafting a world. He launched Golf Wang, his vibrant clothing line dripping with color and irony. He created Camp Flog Gnaw, a music festival that turned Los Angeles into his personal playground of art, music, and mayhem. Every detail, from pastel logos to stage design, carried his fingerprints. Underneath the loud persona, something was shifting. The kid once known for provocation was now searching for peace, melody, and meaning. When he smiled in interviews, it wasn't the grin of a villain anymore. It was the quiet pride of an artist who had survived his own chaos. Tyler had become more than a rapper. He was a designer, director, producer, performer. A multiverse of creativity contained in one restless soul. And while the world celebrated his rise, few knew the inner storms still brewing behind his smile. Storms that would soon test everything he'd built. With fame came the flashbulbs, and with the flashbulbs came the fire. Tyler's words, once seen as art, were now dissected, criticized, and condemned. His early lyrics, violent, satirical, exaggerated, were pulled from their creative context and turned into headlines. News outlets labeled him homophobic, dangerous, even toxic. The irony was bitter. The same chaos that made him famous now threatened to destroy him. In 2015, the UK and Australia banned Tyler from entering, calling his lyrics a threat to public morality. He was stunned. "I've never hurt anyone," he said. "I just make stuff." But the damage was done. Concerts were cancelled, sponsors pulled back, and fans divided. The rebel who once thrived on shock now faced a question that fame couldn't answer. Who are you when the world decides you're the villain? Behind the scenes, Tyler's bravado began to crack. Friends described him as quieter, more reflective. The relentless touring, public backlash, and creative exhaustion took their toll. For an artist who built his identity on control, of image, of sound, of chaos, losing that control was unbearable. And yet, deep in that isolation, a transformation began. He started questioning the walls he had built, between humor and vulnerability, masculinity and sensitivity, rage and love. The boy who had once shouted at the world was learning to listen to himself. Tyler would later admit, "I used to think anger was power, but then I realized love scares people more." The scandal years were brutal, but necessary. They stripped away the armor, leaving behind something raw and real. A man standing in the ruins of his own myth, wondering what kind of artist, and what kind of human, he wanted to become. From the ashes of controversy rose a sound no one expected, soft, melodic, and painfully sincere. In 2017, Tyler released Flower Boy, and everything changed. Gone were the shock tactics and dark personas. In their place bloomed honesty, warmth, and emotional complexity. The album felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. He rapped about loneliness, love, and confusion, even hinting at his sexuality in lyrics that caught the world off guard. "I've been kissing white boys since 2004. he said in a line that shattered years of assumptions and sparked endless debate. But this time, Tyler didn't flinch. He wasn't explaining, he was expressing. Critics hailed Flower Boy as a masterpiece. Fans called it healing. For the first time, Tyler wasn't hiding behind characters or chaos. He was embracing vulnerability as rebellion. And the world finally began to understand the artist behind the noise. Then came Igor, 2019, a pastel-colored heartbreak opera that defied genre. Funk, soul, rap, and electro collided into something transcendent. Tyler sang, not rapped. He danced, not posed. He wore blonde wigs and neon suits, and for all the world's confusion, he didn't care. Because Igor wasn't about fitting in. It was about feeling free. When the album won the Grammy for Best Rap Album, Tyler stood on stage, quiet but proud. He thanked his mother, his fans, his friends, and then said softly, "This is for the weird kids who look like me." That was the redemption. Not through apology, but through evolution. Tyler had turned pain into beauty, defiance into art, and controversy into acceptance. He wasn't running from who he was anymore. He was creating the world he always wanted to live in. By the time Igor spun through speakers around the world, Tyler, the creator, had become something larger than music. He was a movement, a symbol of self-expression, freedom, and fearless creativity. Once dismissed as a shock artist, he was now celebrated as a visionary. He didn't just redefine hip-hop, he expanded it, painting it with pastel colors, jazz chords, and emotional depth. He showed that vulnerability could be powerful, that fashion could tell stories, that masculinity could coexist with softness. Artists like Billie Eilish, Steve Lacy, Brockhampton, and Frank Ocean credit Tyler's influence. His work inspired a generation to blend genres, to create without fear, to speak their truth without apology. Even beyond music, his fingerprint is everywhere, in streetwear, design, humor, and the new era of internet-born authenticity. Through Golf Wang, he turned bright colors and absurdity into a statement of joy. Through Camp Flog Gnaw, he built a community, an annual festival that feels more like a family reunion for creative outcasts. And through his evolution, he taught millions of fans that it's okay to change, to outgrow your own skin, and start again. Tyler's legacy isn't about perfection, it's about possibility. He made it clear that you can be strange, angry, sensitive, and brilliant all at once, and still belong. In an industry obsessed with formulas, he became the living proof that chaos, when guided by truth, can build empires. Fame didn't make Tyler louder, it made him quieter. The kid who once screamed through microphones now speaks softly about gratitude, discipline, and the art of patience. Behind the bright colors and wild performances is a man who finally found comfort in his own skin. He often credits his mother for his grounding, the woman who raised him alone, who stood front row at every award show with tears in her eyes. Tyler never forgot those early years in cramped apartments, the struggle, the hunger, the dream that seemed too big. Now when he looks back, he says simply, "I did all this so my mom could smile." Outside of the spotlight, he surrounds himself with close friends, long drives, and creative solitude. He designs furniture, sketches clothing, builds sets, not because he has to, but because creation still feels like breathing. He rarely talks about relationships, fame, or wealth. Instead, he speaks about time, and how it's the only real currency that matters. In interviews, he laughs at his younger self, the angry kid who thought rebellion was shouting louder than everyone else. Now, he says, rebellion is peace, happiness is punk. He donates quietly, mentors young artists, and stays off the celebrity grid. For a man who built his career on noise, Tyler has learned the rarest lesson of all, how to be still. And in that stillness, the creator finally became what he was always meant to be. Not a brand, not a headline, but a man at peace with his own story. Tyler, the creator's story isn't about perfection. It's about becoming, through pain, rebellion, color, and sound. From a fatherless kid sketching fake album covers in his room to a Grammy-winning visionary who built his own universe, Tyler showed that art isn't just what you make. It's who you are when no one is watching. He broke every rule, not to be controversial, but to be honest. He taught a generation that creativity doesn't need permission. That you can be weird, flawed, angry, tender, and brilliant all at once. He stood at the edge of judgment, turned it into melody, and handed it back to the world wrapped in pink and gold. In the end, Tyler's greatest creation wasn't Odd Future, Flower Boy, or Igor. It was himself, the man who learned that true strength lies not in how loud you are, but in how deeply you feel. As the final notes fade, one question lingers. The same one Tyler seems to ask with every beat he makes. What would you create if you stopped caring about what they think